Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Lunta Di La Paulo, and in the last few days or weeks, I've been doing a lot of videos in Portuguese to my Angolan and Lusophone folks. And today, I was scrolling on YouTube, and I came across last night's John Oliver's video on environmental racism. And I want you to take a listen, to kind of listen a little bit about this video. And then I want to share a little bit about what I think is so important about this video that probably was missed. And I understand a lot of the US media are focused specifically to the US, but there are some things that I think are so important to take into account. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
Look, we all suffer from exposure to pollution in this country, but some significantly more than others, thanks to what's called environmental racism. Studies have found that black Americans are exposed to 38% more polluted air and are 75% more likely to live in communities that border a plant or a factory. And crucially, the disparity in exposure persists even when controlling for income. One study found that on average, black Americans making $200,000 were exposed to more air pollution than white Americans making $25,000, proving that yet again, racism is one of the few things in this country more powerful than money. In fact, I believe America's current top 5 power rankings go racism, beef, viral videos of soldiers reuniting with their dogs, DJ Khaled's PR team, and then money. And while the decisions that lead to disparate outcomes can be subtle, they can also be incredibly flagrant. In 2008, there was a massive spill of coal ash here in Tennessee, with tons of toxic waste dumped into a largely white community. Now, the good news is they removed 4 million tons of it. The bad news is it was then dumped 300 miles away in this largely black community called Uniontown, where residents were pretty clear about what had just happened.
Taking that from a white area, if the white people didn't want it, let's just keep it 100. If the white folks ain't want it, why do you think it's good enough for the blacks?
Yeah, she's absolutely right. It seems when white people don't want something anymore, they either dump it on minority communities or sew a hummingbird on it and list it on Etsy as handmade vintage. Let's keep it 100 for a second. That is garbage. The fact is, though, black neighborhoods in particular can get targeted with incredible precision, and the stakes could not be higher here. Pollution is one of the driving factors behind conditions like heart disease, asthma, and even death, with black Americans nearly 3 times as likely to die from
Hey, so I'm gonna stop here just for a second. So environmental racism, a lot of people know about this topic and subject more than I do, and I am by no means an expert in this subject. Okay, and I love John Oliver. I'm a big fan of his show, of his videos. I watch and I eagerly wait for for his shows almost every single Sunday. And when he goes on vacation or he takes times off, I really do miss him because he's an incredible guy and he brings the information in such educated way. And I love him. I love his show, his team that produce amazing content for that. Now, what really strikes me is the fact that, by going through this entire video, right, it seems like there is no mention of anything else outside of the US. And we have to understand that when we talk about environmental racism is not only about the United States. It's a global issue, a global phenomena that affects more countries outside of the US than, the Black and Latino minorities communities here in the US. By no means I am suggesting that this is not relevant, this is not an important issue that have and must be addressed here in the United States, okay? But here's what I'm trying to say is the fact that in Africa, in the African continent, in Asia, and any other continent that is not North America and Europe, where environmental regulations are stronger and present, even though we seem to believe that these environmental laws have been deregulated, which are in large degree, is the fact that in other places in the world where environmental laws are not as even loosening as here in the US, or there aren't organizations and institutions that enforce these regulatory laws or guidelines, a lot of people are in serious danger and the planet is being destroyed even more in these places. Let me show you a report by the Amnesty International, okay, that just shows how terrible this situation has been in the Niger Delta. This is in Nigeria. Shell is an oil company that literally polluted an entire region of the country. I'm gonna show the video that the report shows that only 11% of the sites have been they have began cleaning this site. And I was watching a video by the BBC that were showing how if you go out with a white t-shirt or piece of clothing, when you come back it gets dark because there is ashes in the air. People can't breathe, and these people's life expectancy is seriously reduced. People are growing with diseases that they will never be able to afford getting treatment for. And not only Shell, there are many other oil companies like the Italian ENI company in that also operates there, and possibly American companies as well. Let me share a video here just to give us a context, okay? By the Bloomberg Business.
Are
Okay?
its lifeline. They provide food, work, and even a place to wash. But they're full of oil.
Before, you could not be able to see the other side because of the mangrove vegetation. It covered the whole of this area by the pollutions of 2008 and 2009 destroyed the whole place.
This is Bodo, a small community in an area of southern Nigeria called Ogoniland. Almost everyone here lived off that land, fishing or farming. In 2008, 2 oil spills from Shell pipelines devastated the environment and people's livelihoods.
Father could not be able to put food on the table. Mother could not be able to put food on the table. Their children could not go to school. They wouldn't have fish to eat. And so the community become more less than a refugee community.
Spills are common in the Delta. Around 240,000 barrels of oil leak out into the creeks every year. Technically, Shell stopped producing oil and gas in Ogoniland in the 90s, but its pipelines still pump it through the region. This former refinery is only a few miles from Bodo. It was shut down in 1993 after violent protests against the oil industry. The jungle has started to reclaim the land, but even after 20 years, oil still leaks out into the ground.
It's going to take about 30 years for the creek to be restored. So within that period, Shell, how many billions of pounds from here, they came here in 1958. And this is where they have lived for more than 40-something good years.
In 2012, the Bodo community took Shell to court in London, and after a 3-year legal battle, they won.
And they came out that Shell should pay Bodo people 55 million pounds. Oh, there were jubilations all over.
So I'm going to stop here just a little bit, just to think about the environmental devastation that has happened in this area. This is just one example of many other across the African continent. The Atlantic Ocean or the Indian Ocean have been massively polluted by Western companies who chose these places to dump the trash and the waste that they can't legally dump into the shores of either Europe or North America because of the regulatory environment that exists in these places. Okay, and the African continent and many other continents that do not necessarily have this level of regulatory force and power are at the mercy of corporation that we own, that we control, but unfortunately we aren't willing to save the planet. Often the discourse when it comes to saving the planet, it seems like the planet resumes to the United States or North America, excluding Mexico, by the way, and Western Europe, Australia, and Japan, and now a little bit China. Okay, so here's what I'm saying is that John Oliver, I'd love for you to call out the corporations that are polluting Nigeria, the Delta, polluting the African continent, and ask for accountability. I have a very small voice. Nobody's gonna pay attention. But if you do, people will actually listen. And this is a guy from Angola, an African country, I hope you know where that is asking the international community to actually look into what's going on in Nigeria and many developing countries. Okay, that 55 million pound that the company was fined, if it was in the US that got polluted, it would have been in hundreds of millions. But even if it was in hundreds of millions, money cannot buy us a new planet. It can't buy the lives of people who are dead because of the pollution in their area. The families that got uh, the misplaced, be displaced because of the pollution in their lands, in their rivers, in their ancestors' land. So again, it's really good that we are talking about environmental racism here in the United States. But we also have to understand that environmental racism is at the global stage, at the global level. And these must be addressed. If we have to talk about about addressing environmental racism, we have to extend it to the African continent, to Latin America, to Asian countries. India and Pakistan they both have the 10 most polluted cities in the world. China, just a bit ago, when it went in its spree of development, of industrialization, it had some of the most polluted cities in the world. Okay? So, at the end of the day, right, we are trying to save North America and Europe and forget that the planet is bigger than this. Okay, the activists in the developed world, right? My call to all of you is to really think about the planet and not only the countries where you're from. When you go out to protest and march, it shouldn't only be about the notion of planet around your backyard, around your neighbors, around your developed nations. It has to include Brazil, it has to include Uruguay, it has to include Angola, South Africa, Namibia, it has to include Pakistan, India, because if we do not address environmental racism at the global level, we will save North America, yes, we will save Europe, but we will have lost the planet Earth. So thank you for your time, and I hope you give this video a voice.